In the meantime, though, you're back with me and Dan. Dan's here,
Hello.
double duty, double D. We're going to talk about COVID-19. Please stay with us, though. We promise it's not too depressing. We're talking about the impact of the pandemic on studios and on the kind of culture in studios. So we've done some talking around this before, and you might remember if you're an avid Etch Play fan, which I'm sure everyone watching definitely is. We've done blogs in the past about the kind of toll that lockdown, especially, has had on game studios, game publishers. I'm going to put a link in the chat so you can check out that blog from the last time we spoke about this, and post that in there now. So there's a variety of kind of unique, maybe not unique, but rare challenges around game development that maybe people don't always consider. You would think everyone in game dev just works on a computer. Why can they not do that from anywhere? Why is it not fine? But as Dan's going to explain, there are actually some pretty challenging differences between game development and traditional development or other kinds of computer-based work. Do you want to talk about that, Dan, now?
Yeah, sure. So, absolutely. We are going into lockdown part 2, and so game studios, like I said, you'd kind of think, well, games developers, they're going to be leading edge technical digital folks. They surely can just go and work from anywhere. But as we discussed when we first went into lockdown, some of the and as we mentioned earlier, kind of there are some production challenges. You consider this year's smash hit Red Dead Redemption 2, 120 gigabyte download. I think the console game is. Now, if you imagine you're working on a game like that, you will be doing builds of the game. You will have a army of testers that will need to test that game, and they're now all sat at home on their Sky broadband connections, whereas they were previously on their super fast local network, access to build machines, access to rendering farms. So there's been some serious logistical challenges for game studios to overcome, which I think is perhaps made more obvious by all the delays and things that we're seeing announced. But one specific challenge that we talk a lot about with our clients is that of, recruitment is always such a key objective for games companies. It's obviously a highly desirable industry to work in. It's obviously a high growth industry, and so there is always a big challenge around recruitment and trying to attract the best staff. And a way traditionally that a game studio would do that is to showcase their culture, and they really try and push the dream, as you might imagine. Like, this is a cool environment, this is our cool office, we've got games, we've got funky artwork, everybody's happy here. And so the culture push is all about the environment and the people within that environment. And you often as well, you'll get a lot of geographical pushing. So, we're in this funky town center location, there's restaurants and bars, and we all hang out together. This is a great environment to work in. So that's what you see the videos and the articles and photography pushing that agenda. And of course that's quite different now. And the studios that we work with are kind of having to think, well, how do we attract the next hires, because the industry is still growing, it is thriving, even during these difficult times. So it's been interesting to revisit that and think, well, how can we communicate culture, because they are still amazing places to work, but it's having to shift the focus from perhaps the more obvious, I guess, kind of like viewpoints that you would get onto this studio life, and now we're perhaps having to think about, okay, well, what sort of impact can people have? What is the work that they're going to be doing looking like, and how do we collaborate, and what is the fun that we still have even in these environments? So it's a real interesting challenge, and there's different studios approaching this in different ways, and certainly not a ubiquitous solution that's been found yet. But I think it's kind of a good thing to add some new constraints, because you do end up with perhaps a homogenized view of, here's some people around the pool table, here's some people around the games console, here's some people walking by a bar, kind of thing. So actually, maybe this is a good opportunity to mix that up and and ask some questions.
Yeah, and obviously when we talk about the impact of the pandemic, obviously we're in lockdown 2 now, which is going to take us to at least December 2nd. But it's probably worth mentioning for those who might not know at home, like, this is not a short-term thing for game studios. Like, there's not an expectation that everyone's going to rush back into a game studio office on December 3rd. In fact, most major tech companies, and anecdotally from what we've heard from studios, they're planning on, not opening the office again this year in some cases, or when they do, it's in a very limited way for people who really need it. And increasingly, this kind of, I guess, what you might call a hybrid approach to remote work, where there is an office available, but you're also very distributed almost by default most of the time, is increasingly becoming the norm. And like you say, there's a kind of an old guard way of doing recruitment, I guess, and a way of selling yourself, and the kind of, you mentioned the kind of classic pitches, the ping pong tables, the stuff that people see and, oh yeah, it looks fun, I'd love to work there, I could imagine myself on that sofa, use that kitchen. And now I think, you're kind of forced to reckon with, what is your studio culture really? Like, what is it when you're not in the same room? What are you left with, and what do you actually have in the groups of people that you have? Like, what are the mechanisms you have that still function in terms of this new, I don't want to say new normal, because I'd hate myself when I watch the show back, but the situation that we find ourselves in, all tech companies find themselves in. Are there any examples that you've seen of people that you think are getting this really right? Like, are the people you've seen you think, they're nailing it?
I did see the folks over at Endreams, who are based in Farnham. They do a lot of really good VR work, and I just saw some videos going around, and they'd done I think it was for charity, like a Taskmaster challenge.
Oh, nice.
And they put together a video. Everybody was kind of filmed themselves doing these challenges. It was like, who can throw a tea bag into a mug the most creatively, and things like that. And even though it was like a cut of people's phones filming themselves doing these weird things, you immediately got a real sense of fun. And it was a charity initiative, so there was a lot sort of communicated by their, it's kind of communicating their values by doing that, and actually the fact that people engaged with it as well tells you a lot. We've all been in an office environment where it's like, oh, let's do something fun and wacky, and it's kind of like people actually reluctantly or just don't engage in these kinds of things. So
enforced fun, everyone loves enforced fun.
Yeah, exactly.
I've enforced a lot of fun in my life.
I thought that was really nice to see. And what I'm also seeing is focus turning back to the work, as I mentioned, and ultimately, and I think this is particularly more, perhaps more will resonate more with more senior or the older guard, who it's great to work in a cool environment and have access to the beer fridge and all these kinds of cliche things, but that is quite a thin veneer of your working life, and actually the main thing that you do is the output that you create. So focusing on the games that we make and the working practices that we do, the processes and the expertise that we have, and I think that can be really, really powerful, because as well, if you're looking to work somewhere, you want to work with experts, and if you're seeing somebody doing some crazy animation technique and you're thinking, God, that's really, really cool, I'd like to learn from this person, that's arguably maybe even more powerful than just a nice environment.
Yeah, and I think it's a real opportunity for change. And even before the pandemic, there was definitely a growing, I guess, consensus among a lot of people that the way that game studios were advertising their culture wasn't always entirely, not that it wasn't entirely accurate, but that it wasn't entirely enticing to all different kinds of people from a diversity perspective, and that's not just about people of colour and ages and all those sorts of things, but even just like people who don't drink. Like the idea of your culture page being just like, here's all of us absolutely hammered on beer. It's like, is that what your studio is? And is that what people want? Is that too exclusive a club, or is that maybe not the way to go about things?
Definitely, it's an opportunity to revisit the inclusivity of how we work and what we do, and we can, and you've also got the opportunity, and I'm seeing you're kind of seeing two camps really. Some people are um, realizing, oh, actually, the value is in our connectedness, our togetherness, our geographic, what we share geographically. That we are a town center, this place focused studio, and that is what we are and who we are. And then you're seeing others who are opening up to the fact that okay, actually, we aren't constrained by physical location, and now we're seeing job opportunities opening up to the global stage, and you can be more inclusive, and different people from different backgrounds, different nationalities, different classes, and I think that's really interesting. It's kind of been a forced learning to the recruitment processes,
Yeah.
and yeah, there's lots of advantages for that.